All right, man. Today is Friday. It is February 17th. Welcome to the Dog Walk, presented by Barstool Sports. I'm your host, Eddie. So we're going to do another Chicago Friday today, okay? So since the beginning of January, first week of January, I've been having Chicago Mayoral content on this Friday feed, and today is no different. Today I'm actually joined by the incumbent, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and since this will probably have a lot more eyeballs because it's Lori, I figured I'd put this out there before the episode airs. And that's to let everyone know that there are other episodes before this that I'd like to everyone to go back and check out. I've had two other candidates on before this. I've also had other politicians. I've had a Chicago police officer on, John Garrido. So it's kind of a series, and I just kind of wanted to take this opportunity to pump up the whole series altogether before I got into today's episode. I guess I could also say one more time as well that I just ask the questions, and I let you guys decide for yourself. So that's what I'm here for. So I line it up. They give you guys their response, and you guys make your decision yourself. So Mayor Lori Lightfoot is on today. And then next week, I'm hoping to have Paul Vallis to kind of round out this series. So that will be it. So we'll have one more, and then we'll roll into this election. It will be Tuesday, February 28th. So without further ado, here we go. Mayor Lori Lightfoot on the podcast. All right, so we're here. We are live. I am here with Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Lori, thanks for doing this.
It's my pleasure.
This is Barstool, Lori. I don't know, so this is not the buttoned-up media anymore, so you could let loose. No one's going to listen. No one's going to watch this. No one's going to say anything. So you could say what you want here. Okay?
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah. So, question. Before, when I told people I was doing this, people were like, "Oh, you gotta go hard. You gotta go hard on her." Well, why do you think that is? Why do you think there's such angst?
Well, look. First of all, in this day and age, anybody that's in a position of leadership, public leadership, or authority, there's a lot of agita, right? Mm-hmm. Look at what's happening, the winds of dissension that are blowing all across our country. And people in public life are absolutely the targets of that, and I get it. Plus, we're 2 years removed from, 3 years from the start of COVID, 2 years, 1.5 years removed from the worst of it being behind us, but it's still here. And you know this, COVID upended everything that we took for granted about our lives. Mm-hmm. The certainty of what tomorrow was going to look like, the certainty about our jobs, about our relationships, our freedom of movement, all of that was changed dramatically. And people, I think, are still feeling what their new life is going to be like. We're in a time where we're in this period of transition and inflection. So it's not surprising to me that there's a lot of angst and agita. But come at me, man. I'm ready.
All right. So in your eyes, if whoever was mayor right now, given the climate, given COVID, given the trends of the city, whoever was in your position right now would be kind of going under the same scrutiny? There's
no question in my mind. Look, Chicagoans have a love-hate relationship with their elected officials, and particularly with their mayor. And I know that. I knew that coming into it. This time, I think, has exacerbated that normal kind of baseline feeling. But I also look across the country. I talk to my fellow mayors all the time. Every single one of us is facing the same kinds of headwinds and really anxiety and agita from the residents in our city. So I'm not thinking Chicago is going to be this unicorn and that I'm going to be spared from that. I'm not. But I think what I focus on is not so much that as talking to people directly and candidly about what we've been through, how we frankly fared better than any other city in the country, and specifically the concrete, tangible thing that we have done to make life better for people in the city. I can't let people forget that, because that is the way forward. That's how we rebound from this terrible time that we've been through. That's how we come together as a city.
No, but on a personal level, though, when I remember seeing you during the last election cycle. I walked past you and your wife at Block 37, and I was doing the same thing. I was interviewing a bunch of candidates, and you were, it just seemed different, right? Like you just got that big endorsement from the Sun-Times, I remember, and you had a lot of pep in your step. Mm-hmm. Like, is this what you expected, though? Like, are you still, like, you got to be beaten down a little bit?
Look, I never get too high or never get too low. Of course it's not what I expected. I didn't expect to come into office and a few months later face a global pandemic. But I know who I am. I know what my North Stars are, and I focus on getting my job done every single day for the people of the city. When you are an elected official in a very public place like I am, there's always going to be critics. It goes with the job. I mean, you think about what Rich Daley endured. Think about what Rahm did. But think about all across our country, elected officials are the target of criticism from people who are angry and frustrated. But what I also know is every single day I hear from people and say, thank you for what you did for us. Thank you for how you brought us through COVID. Thank you for the investments that you're making all across our city. So I get a lot of people thanking me because the folks that know that we've been through hell and back for sure, but we are in a better place because of the leadership that I have brought to the city. Now, again, I'm not someone who sits around and pats myself on the back. I don't do the work for the greater glory of Lori Lightfoot. That's not how my ego is wired. But I also know we've done a lot for people in the city, some really generational and historic work that we've laid the foundation for, and I'm running for re-election to finish the work.
Okay, let's go into that though. Let's give me one thing that you think is generational, one thing that you maybe regret.
I could give you lots of things that I think are generational. I'll give you two. One is the work and investment that we've done on the south and the west sides. We have inspired through concrete investments on the south and the west side and communities that have been starved for resources, not just the economic investment, that's important, not just the way in which we are lifting up developers and construction managers and other people that frankly didn't get a seat at a table with 30, 40, $50 million deals. But fundamentally what we're doing is we're generating hope and optimism that didn't exist before, and that's absolutely critical. One other thing that I'm extraordinarily proud of is, look, people in the city have been experiencing a lot of trauma for a long time. COVID absolutely exacerbated that. And then a lot of people said, reopen the city-funded mental health clinics. And I thought that 4 years ago when I was running. But what I know from listening to the experts, but also frankly to patients, that the best strategy is the one that we put in place starting in the fall of 19. Fast forward, when all the clinics were open, we were serving about 3,600 patients a year, mostly only the most acute cases, and no children, no adolescents. We just ended 22 serving over 74,000 people in the city, and children and adolescents, with free, culturally competent mental health services all across our city. You asked me what would I've done differently? I mean, look, when you're facing a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, with the benefit of hindsight, there's always things that you can say, well, I wish we had known more, I wish we'd be able to do things. But I'm not a person who, frankly, lives my life with regrets. You learn from your mistakes, you pick yourself up, and you work every single day to do better the next day than you did the day before. And that's really how I've tried to govern, and that's how I've lived my life.
So I guess something when it comes to COVID regards would be your regret, is what you're saying?
No, what I would say is, frankly, I wish we had more support from the federal government in the early days, different administration than there were now. Certainly, given what we knew, I think we did a heck of a job. There are people walking this city today that wouldn't be alive but for the work that we did to educate people, to be transparent. Remember the days of the daily press conferences where we're talking about how we're bending the curve, what our concerns were, educating people about the realities of COVID rather than all the misinformation that was bouncing around social media world. And then when the vaccines came, what we were able to do to get huge swaths of the city vaccinated. I think we did a very, very good job under extraordinarily difficult circumstances with virtually zero support at the time from the federal government.
Is there a narrative out there that you think is absolutely false that bothers you the most?
How much time you have?
How much time will you give me? We got 20 minutes. I know that.
No, look, here's what I would say. Right? There's a narrative out there, the mayor is mean, the mayor can't get along with anybody, she doesn't know how to collaborate, which is utter nonsense.
Well, you're a little feisty.
Feisty's not mean. Yeah, I'm feisty.
Contentious? How would you describe yourself?
I would describe
hostile?
No, I would describe myself as tough.
Tough, okay.
Tough but fair.
Okay.
And look, you can't be the mayor of Chicago and not be tough. Chicagoans, for better or for worse, they want somebody in the office that's tough. You look at the people who have held this job going back 30 plus years, every single one of us, the one through line, we're all very different, but the one through line is we're all very tough, because you have to be tough. Every single day, literally, I'm making life and death decisions. I'm making decisions about who is going to prosper, where we're going to invest. You can't be a milquetoast and be the mayor of Chicago. This narrative that, because of her personality, she can't get along with anybody, can't get something done. When I came into office, we had at that time, the largest budget deficit in the history of our city. That was $838 million. Well, guess what? We closed that budget deficit, and we closed it with cooperation of a majority of city council members. Next year, we face the same challenge, even worse, because of COVID. Our budget deficit then was $1.2 billion. Well, guess what? We closed that gap as well with collaboration and a majority of city council members. We didn't do layoffs. We didn't cut city services. We dug down deep, and we got the job done. The casino that's coming to Chicago, 30 years in the making. No other mayor could get it done. I got it done. And that took me being on the phone, building those relationships with people in Springfield to get this deal over the threshold. Look at the Red Line extension. That has been something that's been talked about since the days of Richard J. Daley in the 1950s. If you can't collaborate and you can't work with folks and get stuff done, there's no way that happens. Same thing, we announced a 7-county deal with all the counties around Chicago. So we have a Chicagoland level of cooperation and collaboration on marketing and business pitches and not poaching. You can't get that done unless you've got a level of trust with people outside of the city, which I've worked hard to establish in my time as mayor. So I could give you other examples, but look, I know, given who I am, that I'm going to be viewed with a different set of standards, a different set of lenses. What I would say is the proof is in the pudding, and we prove it every single day.
And so that's kind of the thing of how you've come off as far as, like we just talked about, hostile or whatever. You say tough. Other people would say hostile, whatever. You would say that's like kind of what triggers you the most, maybe?
I wouldn't say triggered me. You asked me what's the narrative out there that's
bothered.
Yeah, so
you think it's unfair
because it's untrue.
Untrue. Okay. What about the CPD narrative? That's your anti-Chicago police.
Well, I mean, fundamentally false. I'm a former federal prosecutor who worked hand in hand with CPD officers every single day. Some of my greatest triumphs as a prosecutor, successful cases, were ones that we made together. I worked in the police department in the early 2000s. Now, do I not get along with the bigoted leader of the Fraternal Order of Police? You betcha. Because his values are not just different, they're offensive and repugnant to, I think, most people in the city. But do I have the CPD officers back? You bet I do. And let me give you a couple of examples. When I came into office, there was a proposal to put $85 million into a joint public safety training academy. So between the police and fire. I knew that $85 million was not nearly enough. So guess what? We doubled that amount. So we're going to have a best-in-class training facility. We just cut the ribbon on it and opened the doors. Training is at the heart of making sure the officers have everything they need to be successful out there in the street. We put in $20 million just solely into officer wellness to make sure that the traumas that they experience every day, that they have resources for them and their families for free to be able to manage that trauma. We've increased the size of the police budget every single year that I've been mayor. And we hired almost 1,000 officers last year, the highest number since 2017. We have not shied away from getting our officers the technology that they need. So when you look at, again, what we have done and what I have done specifically to support our officers, particularly our young officers, more than any other mayor in the history of our city. So yeah, there's a narrative out there, but again, the proof is in the pudding, and what you see in the dollars spent, the training invested, the mental support, and officer wellness, historic investments in our police officers.
I've definitely seen recently your push to hire more and whatnot. I did have a lieutenant on last month, and I asked him the same thing. I was like, "What? Can you give me some examples?" And he gave me two. Would you be able to, like, what do you think two examples where they were particularly mad at you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, going back to my friend John Cantazara, some of them were angry that we required them to get vaccinations, which didn't make any sense to me, I'll tell you. During 20 and 21, the number one cause of death of active duty police officers, not just here in Chicago, but across the country, was COVID-19. We lost 4 officers in Chicago before the vaccine came. They got COVID, got sick, and ended up dying. I mean, horrible tragedy obviously for them, their families, and their colleagues. So the only way that I knew, based upon the science, to create a safe workplace for our officers was to have them vaccinated. Now, they had the option, if for religious reasons or medical reasons they couldn't get the vaccine, to opt out of that and then do testing. Unfortunately, FOP leadership turned this into something, and John Cantazara said that vaccination requirements were akin to the Nazis during the Holocaust, which is not only fundamentally repugnant, but also just dumb. So he has propagated a narrative. But I think the vast majority of the officers understand, yes, we're going to be tough and hold people accountable. We're not going to treat honest mistakes the same as intentional misconduct. And we are doing everything we can to raise their ability to do their job effectively, but also, frankly, help them be legitimate in the eyes of the public. Because you don't have the public on your side as a police officer, you can't do your job.
The two he brought up was the Bobby Rush popcorn scandal. He thought that it wasn't handled the right way, and the coordinated attack on the officers at the Columbus statue. So I don't know if you
so
have any
I would say a couple things about that. Remember what the scenario was when those officers went into Bobby Rush's office. Mayhem was going on all over our city. Right, we needed officers, every single able-bodied, to be able to defend property, to defend people, and these officers, frankly, slept through a horrible situation and left their fellow officers in a lurch. Every single police officer that I talked to, from the white shirts on down, about that circumstance, said, "This is outrageous. We're out there. We're getting catching hell all over the city, and these goofs decided that they were going to pop popcorn and sleep in Bobby Rush's office." I just think that was such a gross dereliction of duty. I still think that because they didn't have the backs of their fellow officers.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe there was a miscommunication, because he said that was at 1 a.m. when they were supposed to be taking arrests. I don't know.
They were there for 5 hours. They sat there through their whole shift and sat it out. And the sad thing is, there were actually supervisors in there. They were hiding out while officers all around them were catching hell, and they didn't provide the support that they needed. If it was a half hour, if it was an hour, right, then you kind of get it. But the whole shift, almost the whole shift, no. Utter dereliction of duty. And you got to be better than that if you want to wear, I have the honor of wearing the badge of Chicago police officer.
So we could get to some sports. I know we want to talk some sports. Mm-hmm. How'd you feel about that first portion? Was that
fine?
Okay. All right. All right.
Your fans who said, "Be tough with her. Be tough with her." Hopefully they're satisfied.
Well, it's just, listen, it's the same thing I did with everybody. I ask questions. I give people the platform to speak, and it's up to you to make your mind. I fully admit, I think way too many people interject and put out their opinions without totally knowing what's going on. And I'm one of those people. I'm not a fucking expert, so I don't do that. So that's kind of how I play by. That's the rules I play by. I just saw breaking news right before you walked in. Did you see that the Bears closed on the Arlington property?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been expecting that, frankly, for a long time, and candidly thought it was going to happen over the fall. But the good news of that is this. This gives us now the ability to negotiate directly with them and make the case and the business case as to why they need to stay in Chicago. While they had that option, they had restrictions on how they could talk to us directly. So we were having indirect conversation so as not to violate the terms of their agreement. But now we're going to go full bore. There's no reason certainly not a business reason for them to leave the city. We believe that there are incredible viable options, particularly given the amount of traffic and tourists and tourism that comes to Chicago that no place else in the state or frankly the region can match. I believe that we have proposals, a series of them for Soldier Field that are going to retrofit it, bring in more revenue, give them the opportunity to move them up as a tier 1 stadium across the country. So I'm excited about the opportunity that this presents, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep the Bears, the Chicago Bears, in Chicago.
Wow. So you still think there's a chance?
I
really?
do. I really do. I really do.
I don't know. I think the way everything's trending, everyone wants the big Taylor Swift concerts, and they get that now, but they'll get double the people. They'll get, they'll get the
not
they'll get Final Fours.
Not in the suburbs. Not in the suburbs.
Yeah.
We've done the math. We've looked at the economics of this thing. Think about this, right? Every single concert that came last summer to Soldier Field, and frankly got a bunch of them lined up for this year, sold out dates. Sold out. Some of them added additional dates because Soldier Field is such a sought-after venue. There's a lot of money to be made in Soldier Field, but also what we're proposing, if you think about in particular the west side of the stadium, which is basically open air in the big pillars, think about the possibilities of closing that in, making that more club space, right? Making it, frankly, much more hospitable to the folks on the west side that aren't in the fancy boxes. There's a lot of revenue that we can capture at Soldier Field. We have the option of putting on either a full roof or a partial roof. There's designs that show that we could blow out the north end zone and use that space and the space between Soldier Field and the Field Museum as another little amphitheater and concert opportunity. Think about the marketing, branding, sponsorship opportunities. If we are able to redesign it, I think the sky's the limit. There's a lot of interest in Soldier Field.
Listen, I would love for something to happen. It's just, it's not even its own fault. It's bordered by a highway and a lake and a museum. It's just the landlockedness, and just, has another site at all been like thought about?
Look, we have offered up that opportunity. We're focused right now on Soldier Field, but we got a lot of big vacant property in the city of Chicago. That is, other people we're talking to, frankly, about other kinds of venues that are coming to the city. This is a hot town. Lots of people are interested in coming here, making money on a lot of different opportunities. So don't give up hope. Keep hope alive.
All right.
Keep hope alive.
All right. We'll try. What else is going? What else is? What's fresh on your mind in the sports world?
I will tell you that I rewatched the second half of the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a phenomenal game, which I hope that it would be. I went into it thinking the Eagles are a team of destiny. They played like it in the first half. They were handling Kansas City. But you got to give it props to Andy Reid and his coaching staff. They took that advantage of that halftime, made the necessary adjustments. Mahomes came out like he was an uninjured Mahomes, and they just took it to the Eagles, and the Eagles had no answer. So very, very exciting game. I've got a friend who's like a crazy Chiefs fan. I'm very good friends with the mayor of Kansas City. So it was just really super exciting. And now, right? Pitchers and catchers have reported, so
you going down
hope
there?
springs eternal.
Arizona trip?
You know what? I'm probably not going to get there because I'm a little busy.
Yeah, a little bit, right?
Running for re-election.
You're talking to me. I don't know how, That's.
But, look, I'm wondering what this season will bring for both the Cubs and the Sox. And no secret, I'm a Sox fan, although I pay attention to the Cubs. Have they made enough off-season moves to make the difference? The Sox roster was absolutely stacked the last couple of years, but for a host of reasons, not the least of which is injury. I don't think the starting team was on the field at the same time for very many games. They've severely underperformed. We've traded away some folks, obviously new manager. So I'm curious to see what spring baseball looks like, who's on the rise, who's not. But, it's baseball in Chicago.
Were you devastated when Modelo got taken out of guaranteed rate?
I was a little surprised by that. A little surprised by that.
Well, that's your thing, right? Like
right.
everyone saw that video, right? You know that video.
Well, look, I'm not gonna shy away from the fact that I like to have a beer every now and again.
All right. Yeah. No, you can't. Of course, everyone.
Of course, I like my
Chicago,
brown liquor
everyone
too.
likes. Yeah, of course. All right. Last question, Lori. We're a comedy site, okay? So I apologize if this is out of bounds, but we are a comedy site, like I said. So
Uh-oh. A lot of build up.
A lot of build up. All right. A lot of build up. Okay. Who has a bigger dick than the Italians?
All right. Let's just set the record. Let's just set the record straight.
I had to ask.
Never said it.
Okay.
Don't say it. And frankly, I wouldn't say it.
Okay.
I think it's offensive to the Italians.
Okay. All right. So it's a good question then. I don't think.
I'm happy to set the record straight.
All right. See, this is good. This is good. Comedy sometimes works. All right. She never said it. Drop it. Lori, thank you for doing this.
Pleasure.
Sincerely, listen, I mean, I love the city of Chicago, born and raised here on the Northwest Side. And, whatever happens, whoever it is, like, it just,
It's not whoever, man.
It's you. You're
happening.
You're guaranteed.
It's happening. It's happening.
Are you getting the...
Put it in the air, into the air.
You got to get the
claim it.
2023 tattoo. You got to get the pre-tattoo like one of those people.
We'll see what happens.
All right. Thank you so much for doing
Pleasure.
this sincerely. Yeah.
Thank you, man.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank
Lori
you.
Lightfoot, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back on Monday. We will see you then.